Let's bring this meeting to order here. This is the Carson City Advisory Board for the Nevada Division of Wildlife. We're going to start the meeting with a call to order, and I want to introduce our newest members, Mr. Michael Evans, here, excuse me, and Daniel Thompson, and they go by Mike and Danny, I guess, and they are our newest members here. We're glad to have you guys, and hope you enjoy your time. It's been an eye-opener for me, boy, I'll tell you, and I have grown and grown and grown with every meeting. So, roll call.
Chairperson Green.
Present.
Member Evans.
Present.
Member Thompson.
Present.
Member Beamer.
Present.
Member Stewart.
Present.
Quorum is present.
Okay. We'll now stand and give the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Now we're open for public comment. Is invited at this time to comment and discuss on any topic that is relevant or within the authority of the Carson City Advisory Board to manage wildlife. No action may be taken upon the matter raised under this item of the agenda, though.
For the record, Gil Yannick, I received a letter from the U.S. Department of the Interior relative to horse gatherers, and I know we've had lots of discussions on this, and let me just read it into the record, and I made a copy for you guys so you can have a copy for your file. It says, the Bureau of Land Management, Winnemucca District, Black Rock Field Office has issued a decision record and finding of no significant impact based on the analysis provided in the Smoke Creek Complex Gather Plan environmental assessment. This DR explains the rationale for the selection of the alternative and tools to be implemented. Upon approval from the Washington, D.C. office, the BLM will be able to conduct multiple gathers and removals with fertility control and implementation of a partial non-breeding herd and tools for alternative A for the Smoke Creek Complex gather as described in the EA. Due to wild horse numbers in excess of appropriate management levels and lack of water and forage available for the increasing herd size, management actions are necessary to reduce population growth rate in order to achieve and maintain AML and to prevent further deterioration of range conditions. The ER, DR, and FONSI can be viewed online. It gives you places where additional hard copies are available. If you have any questions, and then there's a second sheet, which I'm not going to read because it's voluminous, but you guys can peruse this, and I don't know if it affects anybody or any group that we deal with, but I'm on this, for some reason I'm on their mailing list, and I thought it would be more apropos for you guys to at least hear that, put it that way. And the only other comment I had, I think I heard you talking about it, Rosie Boat, rather it should be Boa in your... Okay.
Yeah, there was a correction. I think they, well, I was told that by I was told by Suzanne that they were going to correct that on the agenda at the meeting because they had already posted, so I caught it as well, Gil.
Great,
thank you.
okay.
But
Thank you.
a lot of people caught it, and it was commented on.
Yeah. I'm like, what's this Rosie Boat thing?
Row your Rosie Boat down.
Yeah. So I do have some questions regarding what Gil just read in. Now, my understanding is that is just particular to the Smoke Creek Range, right?
Yeah.
That doesn't include any gatherings anywhere else in the state, certainly not in our backyard,
No.
right?
Not at this point.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Just for the record, Mr. Chair, I think that might be a good idea for either you or a member of the board to reach out to BLM and maybe get us on whatever mailing list that they're on. I think, I'm sure that I'm speaking for, I can't speak for the whole entire board, but I'm sure that I would get concurrence is that I think all of us would be interested in that, especially the mere fact that in our own habitat right around here in Carson City, we have a horse habitat, a wild horse habitat of more than 300% of what the capacity has been declared for our habitat around us. So I know I'm certainly interested in it, and
Yes, I absolutely will take care of that, Mr. Bomer. A couple of other things that came about recently about these. Now, these are, because they're not, there are some problems that we run into continually because Department of Agriculture is in charge of those horses, not us, not the Department of Wildlife. So we run into cross problems there. And it gets confusing, and there are people involved that we can't question because of our involvement with NDOW. It's Ag's problem. We can bring up the question, but whether they answer it or not is up to them. Also, another thing I learned is on the population control, one of the more expensive methods is to give the horses vasectomies. However, it's the most efficient method for the future, because when they do the neutering by food, it has to be done every 3 months, and it's over like a 2-year period. It's hugely cost prohibitive. And but once again, the vasectomies for horses is expensive and difficult. They don't just stand there. So that was one of the things too. Another thing that they're experiencing in another north of us throughout the mountain ranges is because of the wild horses, the mountain lion populations are exploding. It's easy for the mountain lions to catch a horse, much easier than a deer. They don't turn corners and stuff. And there are a couple of areas where the mountain lion populations are exploding. So this is something that we don't want to happen here, because they're not going to stick to just horses. They'll just go to any old slow animal.
So if I could share something on that, Mr. Chair. So we were actually in the Pine Nuts, and we actually got to witness that firsthand. A friend of mine just bought a brand new side-by-side, and we were out there kind of showing them around out there, and saw a whole bunch of buzzards and stuff, and we went over to kind of take a look at the first one that we saw, and it was a wild horse that was dead. The bears had looked like they had feasted on it. The mountain lions looked like they had feasted on it, according to what the information I got from one of the wildlife biologists, what that looks like and whatnot. And then we went probably another mile down the road and saw a second one that it was a lot older, but the coyotes were in there, and yeah. all of the buzzards and stuff were still in there and stuff. So that's been, right in our own backyard, we're seeing that, I think. And if it's Department of Ag that's in charge of the herds in our area here, then maybe we need to consider reaching out to them and as in the capacity of a board, or, the appointed board to manage wildlife, and see what their plans are for our area, and I'm be really surprised if we don't get, especially with this news coming out, I'd be really surprised if we don't get some folks from our wild horse advocacy groups in here to petition us to support or not support something. That's in the past we have seen it. I know Gil, Mr. Yannick has been on the committee for a long time. and we have seen that and had to address that. And, the mere fact is, we're appointed as, as a board to give opinion to the commission, but we're also appointed to look in the best interests of the people here in Carson City, too.
I will contact, thank you, Mr. Bomer. I will contact both parties, the Department of the Interior here, the Bureau of Land Management, and the Department of Agriculture, and see what we can find out, and give us an update on that at our next meeting. I believe you're up, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, Chairman Green. For the record, C.K. Bailey, Carson City. I would like, at this time, if it please this advisory board, to pull 8F, as in Frank, 8F, on tonight's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Bailey, is there a reason why you want to pull that, or is there something that you want us to address, or?
Well, I thought I'd wait until we actually
Well, if you could
want
just
to
give us kind
discuss
of
it, but if you'd like a
Because we're
quick
going
overview.
to have to pull it. We're going to have to pull it. One of us is going to have to
Okay.
pull it.
Oh, I'll be happy to.
Yeah,
Oh,
if you could
this-
just kind of highlight in real high level what it is that you feel like we should be reviewing.
Well, there's three
Okay.
points to actually what I'm looking for. It has to do with white bass at Lahontan, let's say, white bass or white bass under 15 inches, including, we're going to include it into, it's being discussed to include it within the 15 fish limit, adoption of a 3-fish limit for the new urban pond, James Kinney Pond in Humboldt County, and there's a question to modify this new, the general limits of Pershing County's, this new pond that they've got, which sounds really cool. Has to do with white bass and white bass hybrids. Okay, so that's the three main.
Yeah, that's good enough for me. When we get to that, Mr. Chair, I'm prepared to take action on that.
Thank you. Any more public comment? With that, we'll move on to approval of minutes from the August 6th meeting. Do I hear a motion to, has everybody had the opportunity to read the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
I wasn't present at that meeting, but I did read through them. I listened to the audio, and I'm prepared to make a motion unless Kirk wants to do that, since he was here.
Jump right in there.
Okay, so I would move that the minutes be approved as written.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Bomer, and Kirk has a second. Do I have a, shall we take a vote? All that approve, say aye.
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 Motion carries. Let's move on. We're up to adoption of today's agenda. Do we have any discussion on today's agenda as it is right now?
Seeing none, Mr. Chair, I would move that we approve the adoption of today's agenda as written.
I need a second.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve and a second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, we're up to disclosures. Any member of the advisory board may inform the chair of his intent to make a disclosure of a conflict of interest on any agendized item or relative to the advisory board business. Disclosures of conflicts of interest must also be made at the time of the specific agenda item, that the specific agenda item is introduced. Anything at this point? Okay, because I have a couple of things I'd like to go over. One is the Department of Wildlife meeting that we had in Caliente. I have 3 items I'd like to talk about on that, at that meeting. Number 1 was the landowner compensation tag. If any of you were looking for growth on that, there was none because the 2 board members representing the ranches and the farmers, neither one were there. So they moved the item forward, so you'll see that again. The second was the bighorn sheep issue. There's a new online course for the hunters for the bighorns. Brian Wakeling is the administrator for that division, and he was just totally impressed with this course. He said he did his master's thesis on the bighorn sheep, and he learned from this course. So he said he recommends anybody that hunts, whether they hunt sheep or not, to take the course. It's free, it's online, and he said it's one of the finest online courses he's ever seen out there. So I haven't seen him that excited before, and he truly was impressed by it. And third, our rosy boa. We had a mistake in our law. There's 2 types of rosy boas. One's only found in Mexico, the other's found here, and we had the wrong Latin name identified. They sent out a questionnaire to 10 shops in Las Vegas that handle rosy boas. 8 of them responded positively. 1 didn't respond, and the other didn't give a comment either or. The reason they were positive is because they're a big, popular item. Currently, with the wrong name mentioned, they have to fill out a lot of paperwork to show it came from a breeder and not caught in the wild. By changing it and fixing it, the most popular rosy boa is the one from Mexico. It's not on the endangered list. They don't have to go through all that paperwork anymore. And they're not found anywhere but the pet shops in Vegas anyway. So they were extremely happy about it. It's going to cut their paperwork down, which was totally unexpected. They thought the shops would be upset because it would they're going to make more money on each snake. So it was very, very interesting meeting, and I would if any of you get a chance to go to these NDOW meetings, there's always something that you're going to be surprised at and have fun with. The other item I want to show is I handed out to each of our board members this new package, and to the public. I didn't give you one. There's a on the petition method to go to NDOW. If you want to have something heard by NDOW and go on their agenda, there is a petition method now. It's on the website, and you go down to committee meetings and look, or meetings, and you follow it down, and it's down at the bottom of the page, petitions. And this is a way of getting your stuff. You will get a response this way, more so than if you just send an email to Nevada Division of Wildlife. And if you have trouble finding it, you can call NDOW, and they will direct you to the right place on the web page. And this way you will have your issue, whether it be public or us as a board. We get heard a lot faster this way, or on the agenda faster this way, because we know the phone numbers. Yes, sir.
So with that, I didn't get a chance to read through this all the way, but what is the number of signatures that you have to have? Do you know that offhand?
No.
Is there any number?
We asked, and as I asked Commissioner East, Tiffany East, and she wasn't sure. She thought 1 was good.
Okay. So I think it's
she did, paraphrase that by she wasn't sure, but she thought.
Well, it'd be good to maybe get some clarification on that for the board.
Okay.
The other thing that I would say is that especially for our new board members, if anybody ever reaches out to you from the public, especially from our community, and wants you to consider something or petition the board to support something or not support something, this is a great way, kind of a great starting point for all of us to kind of say, hey, listen, we have a formal process, here's this, we could utilize this as well. And if it actually comes here and we are in support or against something, we can certainly bring that in front of the board and then pass it on the commission. But it's a great opportunity for you to at least show that you're willing to assist the public in bringing something forward, right? Instead of having to attend a meeting, and some people are a little bit leery to do that, you know what I mean? And this is a better way to make that happen. And I commend NDOW for really coming up with the fine tuning this process, because they've had a process all along. It just hasn't been as fine tuned as this. So I commend them for that.
Thank you. Anything else under the disclosures? Okay, with that, we'll move on to item number 7. This is an informational item, update on the activity report from the Carson City Urban Wildlife Committee.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, I'd just like to, again, bring to everyone's attention that we have set up here a couple years ago, we set up a Urban Wildlife Committee, which is more of a subcommittee. It was designed to work with our community leaders, with Nevada Department of Wildlife, and any other agencies that we felt could get involved in bringing public outreach to the urban wildlife issue that is kind of unique to Carson City, and that we experience on a daily basis here. And we have been working with the cooperative extension from UNR, as well as now NDOW has a full-time person that just that's all they deal with is nuisance wildlife, and help educate the public and those that are being affected by what we classify as nuisance wildlife, because I think that can be arguable. I think that individual, Tiffany, I believe is her name, she actually can come and assist in that effort if we ever are approached by a member of the public or something like that. So it's good to know that. Just up to date, kind of what's going on with the committee. We haven't had too much activity, but as you know, as winter falls upon us, and winter's just right around the corner, we will start seeing a lot of animals trying to take shelter, and mainly here in Carson City, we have issues with mule deer and our coyote problem that we've had, we continue to have, as well as there's been some issues periodically with bears and whatnot. I did get 2 calls here in the last month and a half-ish time frame of people asking about what they should do if they have a bear getting into their garbage and stuff. And my comment to them was I gave them the information from our NDOW representative and how to get in touch with her, and mainly just said, really it's your responsibility to make sure that you contain your garbage, and there's actually some penalties that go along with that here in our actual ordinances here for the city, as well as some state stuff, statute and regulations that go along with that as well. So it was a great educational opportunity in helping them understand how to attain containers that are bear friendly and keep bears out of their garbage. Some simple things like making sure that you put your garbage, if you put it out the night before, make sure that it's locked, or Waste Management actually has locks for Dipsy dumpsters, which is what the majority of people use here. So they said that they can do those. I know the drivers don't typically like them because they got to get out of their truck and take them off. But it is what it is if you're experiencing that. So we have had a little bit of that. We're starting to see a lot of deer come and wander around the city. I mean, that's kind of a everyday occurrence here. But when it gets colder is when they start, and the days get shorter. That's when they start coming out the majority of the time. And when rut season comes into play in November and December, those are the times when sometimes some outreach is good, especially with youth and people that don't know much about mule deer and how they behave. I actually have pictures and video of people at the Capitol trying to take pictures with these big monster non-typical bucks that are down there, and they're rutting, and it's a great opportunity to try and educate them and how dangerous that can be if one of them gets a little upset, right? So anyway, I encourage all of especially the new board members, to get involved in that. Happy to visit offline more about that, but that's my report.
Thank you. I've got a couple of items too. The bear issue. One thing I was told is that you can do easily is if you call 611 and report it to the sheriff's department, they will call the rangers for you, and that way they'll come by at a convenient time and take a report, because they like to make the reports so they know what's happening. And secondly, I had some outreach from some public about wanting our urban updates to be more public, like maybe every couple of weeks have something in Carson Now, because that's what they read. They're not a lot of the people reading, these people that aren't sportsmen, they're just people around town. And knowing more about what the deer and the bear and stuff and their coyotes are doing it on a regular basis helps them adjust some of the things around their home.
I love that.
Anything else from anybody?
I love that idea, and I will absolutely get with the folks from Carson Now and see if we can maybe come up with some sort of a regular type update that we can have in their publication. And so if you guys have any ideas or things that you feel like we need to highlight, please let me know, and we'll make that happen, and I'll be prepared to give a report on that at the next meeting. The other thing that I forgot to mention is Department of Wildlife is holding a waterfowl education class. I don't think it's called that. I think it's like a waterfowl.
Beginner's class.
Say it again.
Beginner's class.
Yeah, I think it's something like that. And so they're having one in the south and one in the north. I believe the one in the north is coming up here soon. So for those that might be listening or interested, that's a great course. I know that they did it last year for the first time, I think, or first time in a while maybe. And I attended it and it was pretty fantastic. So great opportunity to learn a little bit more about Nevada waterfowl and some of the unique opportunities there are here, and to not only photograph but harvest as well. So,
Thank you. That is good. And the Carson Now, quite frankly, is the only regular daily news we have in Carson City anymore. So it is read by most of the public. I think now that the appeal is only published twice a week.
oh, I didn't even know that.
Yes,
My heck.
twice a week, and they didn't lower the rate.
No, jeez.
Is there anything else under disclosures? If not, we'll move on to item number 8. Let's see. And this is for possible action, and the way we do this for our 2 new members here, I'll read this, and then any of the items under item 8, we will pull for conference if we want to talk about them. If not, we'll skip over them. That way we don't spend a lot of time on things that is of no interest in our area.
Or if you support.
Or,
Or
yeah,
if you support what's being said, there's no reason to pull it off unless you have someone from the public come and bring something up that we may want to consider, we serve them. So, without a doubt, however you want to proceed.
yes. Thank you. And, okay, so Carson City Advisory Board to manage wildlife consent agenda items. For additional information on the items to be considered within this action item, please visit NDOW at their website, and it's under the agenda corresponding to the support material within their next meeting. The items agendized hereafter as A8 through AG are consent agenda items. They are considered routine and may be acted upon by the Advisory Board to Manage Wildlife with one action or without extensive hearing. Although a member of the Advisory Board may request an item to be pulled for separate discussion and action, the Advisory Board Chair retains discretion in deciding whether or not to pull an item from the consent agenda. There will be no public comment unless an item is pulled for separate discussion and action. At this point, do we have any of these items that any of the board members wish to pull?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to pull 8E for discussion
8E,
and 8F for discussion.
okay, as noted. The rest of you, any? Okay, Member Bomer wants us to pull 8E and 8F, so we will consider the others, that we will support the others, and we will look at.
We should probably take action on that when we decide what we're going to do.
Okay, yes. Thank you. Okay, item 8E.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, the reason I wanted to pull this for some discussion is, as you were explaining what you explained about this in the last commission meeting, something kind of came to my mind, and I'm always looking at both sides of the table, if you will, right? And the mere fact that you mentioned that they did a survey and that we have a lot of pet stores that sell these rubber boas, mainly the Mexican strain. I guess my question would be, and what I'm a little concerned about hearing that, is if we take away any regulation, and I don't want to make it harder for people to make money, by all means, but if we take away any regulation, is that going to be easier for people to now go out and catch these rubber boas that we do have, the strain we do have in Nevada, and try and pass them off as being caught in Mexico? How do they determine those? How do they determine that? Are there...
Yeah, those that are native to Nevada are not being caught and sold on a regular basis because they're considered by the collectors of the boas as the ugly ones.
So they are differently, they look different?
They're distinctly different.
Gotcha. So that can't happen then, right?
Yeah, when you look at them, now it's called a rosy boa, but the Mexican version is also called the three-stripe boa. And it's more of a dark brown color with 3 yellow stripes that run the full length of the snake. They don't look rosy at all, but they're of that same genus. And they are popular. The ones they're selling in the stores aren't actually caught in the wild. They're coming from breeders. They just don't have to go through the paperwork anymore. And they can collect all of these snakes, whether they're on the endangered species list or not, can be bought legally from breeders.
Right. I guess my concern was, and I was of the assumption that they looked very similar, and that, I appreciate that point of clarification, because if they are different, and I mean, there's no way that one from Nevada or the genus species from Nevada that's here present that is on the endangered species list, if they were to catch one and try and take it to a pet shop and sell it, right? There's no way that they would know. There's no way they can confuse that.
I saw pictures and I talked to the biologist, and they are so distinct in looks. I could show you the pictures one time and you wouldn't be confused.
Okay, so they would know for sure then. Yeah. That's great. Well, I don't need to hear anymore.
Yeah, I thought the one from Mexico looked like a king snake myself, but any more on action E? So we will support that?
I'm in support of it.
Okay, me too. Any other discussion on it? It was very interesting conversations down there. Commissioner East had passed a note along that said if he brought one into the meeting, she was going to watch through the window. We had a good laugh
I might
over
be
that.
right, I might be right there along with her, so I'm laughing because
So, okay, moving on to item number 8. This is the commission on the amendment for the fishing seasons, the bag and possession limits, and regulations for March 1 of 2018 through February 29th, 2020. The Fisheries Division of the Administration, it's Soberg, isn't it? Schoberg, yeah. And the commission will consider amending the regulation. And we have public comment on that from the Department of Wildlife.
Sure. For the record, my name's Kim Tisdale. I'm the supervising fisheries biologist for Western Region for the Nevada Department of Wildlife. And we can go over this a couple ways. Either I can kind of go over everything and just kind of explain to you what we're proposing, or if you guys just have questions about it, then we can go that way too, whatever is your pleasure.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, Kim, if you could just give us a brief summary of what changes are being made from last year till now, that would be great.
Okay.
And then maybe we could have Mr. Bailey just identify the areas of concern that you have, and maybe Kim can comment on that. Is that possible? Just for
Yep,
the
that
best use of
sounds
time?
perfect, yeah. So,
This offline, but that's okay.
That's
I
okay.
love-
No, that's
I love
okay.
seeing you
yeah,
anyways.
no, that's all right. We can talk about it.
Okay.
So this is kind of an off year for fishing regulations. Generally, we do fishing regulations on a 2-year cycle on odd years. So on even years, if there's something new that comes up, a new water or some changes to the regulation that have come to light, then we'll do like a special fishing regulation amendment to what was passed last year. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. We've got 3 different regulations. I'll just kind of go through them, the 3 that we're proposing. Lahontan Reservoir, back in 2013, we made several fishing regulation changes regarding white bass and wipers. And we tried to kind of make it consistent for white bass and wipers, across all of the waters in the Western region where we have them. And so when we made those regulation changes, there were some changes that the Churchill County Game Board wanted us to make to the regulation. And so in the process of, making all those changes and going back and forth from the cab to the department, there was one sentence that got left off of the regulation, which was what we're proposing to add right now, which is that white bass or white bass hybrids under 15 inches may be included in the 15 game fish limit. So right now, the way that the fishing regulation reads for Lahontan Reservoir is that So the way it reads right now is that the limit is 15 warm water game fish, of which not more than 5 may be black bass, 5 may be walleye, and 2 may be white bass or white bass hybrids, which are wipers, longer than 15 inches total length. There should have been an additional sentence on there that said white bass or white bass hybrids under 15 inches can be considered, can be included in the 15 warm water game fish limit. So that sentence got left off, but nobody ever realized it because since 2013 we've been in drought and the white bass fishing has been horrible out there. So in 2017, the Lahontan filled up and, submerged all those willows and tamarisk and the white bass that were in there, reproduced, and you had all that protective cover with all the willows and tamarisk, and the population just exploded. And so this year, we have a event that we do at Lahontan every year called the Kids Carp Fishing Derby, and we chum the beach with corn and, get the kids out there, and they all catch huge carp, and it's a great fun event. Well, this year at the event, people started catching a lot of the white bass and the wipers that we've been putting in there, and you can imagine that the carp got, heck with the carp, we're catching wipers, because they were catching big ones. They're catching 15 to 18-inch fish, all these kids out there. So it was great, but the state parks law enforcement officer came down there, and this is when we realized that some of the law enforcement were misinterpreting this regulation as written, and it's understandable because they didn't understand the intent of the regulation. They were interpreting it as it's written right now, that people can only catch 2 white bass or wipers, and the minimum size is over 15 inches. So kids are catching all these little wipers, and the law enforcement officer was making them put them back because they were under 15 inches. So that's where that kind of all came to light. So we realized, when we did this regulation change, that last sentence got left off. So what we're doing now is we're just putting that back in. So
if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So just for clarification, Kim, then this would change it to where they can only keep 2 fish over 15 inches, right?
yes,
But they can have 15 white bass, really in a sense, under, well, I should say, it would be, if they caught 2 fish over 15 inches, they could have 13 other white bass that were under 15 inches and
Yes.
be completely legal. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay.
And the intent of the regulation is because we put wipers in there, and that's a hybrid between a white bass and a striped bass, and they get very large. The water record in Lahontan right now is 25 pounds,
Yeah, right.
which is only 2 pounds less than the world record, which I'm
Yeah,
pretty
there's a
sure there's a
chance.
world record in
Yeah,
there.
that's-
So I know that there is. But so the intent is to because we have to buy those wipers because they don't reproduce, they're sterile. And so we buy them every year and we put them in there. And so the intent of only allowing people to keep 2 of those is we want them to grow to be trophy size. And so we're kind of protecting that investment, but still recognizing that, people catch a lot of white bass, and you can't tell the difference really unless, I can tell the difference, but most people can't tell the difference because they're very similar. So that's why we have the 15-inch size right there. So very few white bass ever get over 15 inches. So that's the Lahontan regulation. The other one is the change to the Pershing County General Regulation. So right now, the Pershing County General Regulation has the very last sentence in it is that white bass or white bass hybrids under 14 inches in total length may be included in the 15 game fish limit. But there are already special regulations for the Humboldt River and Rye Patch Reservoir, which are the only waters in Pershing County where white bass or white bass hybrids, wipers, occur. So we're just kind of cleaning things up, simplifying things. This doesn't need to be in there. It's confusing to people, and it actually conflicts with what the actual special regulation is for Rye Patch Reservoir because it's a 15-inch limit in Rye Patch, but the general regulation says 14 inches. So we're just removing it. It's not going to make any difference. It's unnecessary regulation, and we're always a fan of simplifying where we can.
So just to clarify that, the 14-inch will be removed, so that removes all the confusion.
Yep.
It still maintains that any fish you catch out of there, whether it be a walleye, a wiper, anything like that, has to be over 15 inches. Is that correct?
No, the 14 inches is just for white bass and white bass hybrids.
Okay.
So the Pershing County General Regulation allows for 5 trout, 15 warm water game fish, of which not more than 5 may be black bass, 5 may be walleye, and 5 may be white bass or white bass hybrids over 14 inches. So we're just kind of removing the whole thing about the white bass and the white bass hybrids because they don't occur in Pershing County outside of Rye Patch Reservoir. We already have,
And Rye Patch Reservoir has its own regulation that says it has to
Yes.
be 15, right?
yes.
Okay.
Yep, so it's just,
Interesting.
another
So if somebody
oversight.
was to, I'm just being devil's advocate here, right? Someone catches a wiper, right, out of Rye Patch or Lahontan, keeps it in a live well, takes it to their local urban pond.
That's illegal.
And I understand that, but I'm just being the advocate here. And they release them in the urban pond. You're saying that they won't duplicate because they're sterile, correct?
Well, the wipers, the white
wipers
bass, yeah, the white bass are viable.
Okay.
So they could reproduce
Okay.
as long as there was 2 of them.
Yeah, okay,
But the wipers are sterile.
okay,
Yeah, which is why they're used in management.
gotcha.
So not only do they grow to trophy size, people like to catch them, but they also can provide some biological control. So if you have, like in Lahontan and Rye Patch, we have Sacramento blackfish, which are
Right.
like a big minnow.
Yeah.
And if you don't have fish that are eating them, they can quickly overpopulate and
Yeah.
just kind of push everything else out. So they're advantageous that way too.
Okay,
Okay, and then we have a new urban pond in Winnemucca, which I'm a big fan of urban ponds. I've been trying to get one in every one of our little communities ever since I've had this position. So Winnemucca was one of the places where we don't have an urban pond. We have lots of stream fishing in Winnemucca, but very little in town. And so we came upon an opportunity with the landowner who wanted to build a pond on his property, and it just happens to be right across the road right across Reinhardt Road, if any you know Winnemucca, from our holding pond, which is, we have a raceway with a well where, we take fish from our hatchery, put them in the Winnemucca holding pond, and then we have a fish truck, and they just kind of go and stock streams from the holding pond. So it's just like a little raceway out in the middle of Winnemucca, but it has a huge water right to it. And so we weren't using hardly any of that water right. And so this not only gave us the opportunity to build an urban pond, but also to show beneficial use to that big water right that we had. So in the western region, we kind of have an urban pond fishing regulation, and it is a 3 game fish limit. So, whatever kind of game fish are in there, trout or bass or bluegill, we limit to 3. The season is open year-round. During park hours. So that kind of, sometimes parks are open or closed, and that just allows us to because the park service or the county or whoever is generally managing the park. Sometimes they close them, sometimes they keep them open 24 hours. So that just allows us to put that on the park. It's open whenever the park is open to the public use. So, and the 3 game fish limit is generally it's more conservative than the general regulation, and that just urban ponds get a lot of pressure, and so that just allows us to, because we have to stock them a lot, as Bailey Pond is the perfect example of that. It's like you cannot stock these things enough, and so it just kind of brings that limit down a little bit, so the fish last a little bit longer, so more people can catch them. So that's what's going on with that one.
I'll just say, I don't know if any of you have gotten a chance to see that new urban pond, but I was there when we actually went and toured it when they were building it, and
The James Kinney.
Yep, the one in Winnemucca there, and what a slick deal, man.
Oh.
I mean, that's ideal for you guys, right? That it's right next to your raceway there, and just a real good opportunity for anybody in that community to take advantage of that.
Yeah, and it's been a really wonderful, community-wide effort. I mean, we didn't spend hardly any money on this pond. It was just Humboldt County and the mines and, local community leaders. Everybody just kind of pitched in, and they just chipped away at it. And it's taken a couple of years, but I mean, it's not like we had to, come and get a habitat conservation fee for, $250,000 and use sportsman's money. It was all community money, and so it was just really a great I mean, Winnemucca's just like that.
Yeah,
They-
it is. I was
Yeah.
just going to say, that's just conducive of Winnemucca, man.
Yeah,
They
no,
just
it is
make-
great.
When they do it right.
Yeah.
The
so-
range out there, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the range that we use very little bit of Pittman Robinson money for that. And these guys keep that range up amazing. It's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, they take
So
ownership of everything. It's
They
pretty
take
cool.
ownership of it. It's great, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, good job, Kim.
Thanks.
I want to tell you, I don't think you hear that enough.
No.
You guys do such a great job, and we can't, us as sportsmen and conservationists, we can't thank you enough.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to hear. Did you have any questions about any of that, Mr. Bailey?
Kevin C.K. Bailey, for the record. Gee, I think you pretty much kind of wrapped the noose around that one, wrapped the lasso around it. First of all, congratulations on the new urban fishing pond, James Kinney, because as you well know, I'm a very big purveyor of urban fisheries. I think that it's one of the stair steps of how we are. Is this thing like?
I just did something.
Is it just? Oh, man. I got to move away from Kim. Check 1, 2. Okay. C.K. Bailey, Carson City, once again. It's the stair step. It's the natural progression. It assists the natural progression in getting the younger folks and families involved in the sport of fishing, be it fly, be it conventional tackle. We can sit there and go into a classroom and try to browbeat people into and dragging people here and there and trying to get them in. But if there's an actual management coordinated effort by the Nevada Department of Wildlife and individuals throughout this and this honorable body to bring more kids, more youth into the fold. Without them, there won't be any need for endow, frankly. There won't be need for any fisheries or anything else because there won't be anybody that cares about it. And it's kind of a funny thing, human beings. We tend to gravitate. We don't like loss. Gain is one thing, it's kind of weak, but when we tend to want, somebody wants to take something from us, all of a sudden we'll grab onto it. I really like this James Kinney place. I think that's fantastic. It sounds like it's like a blood bank. There's this pot of fish, and when it's needed, the truck comes along, takes a dip, and goes over next door and drops them in. By the way, just to let you know, Bailey Pond is open for business right now. It was just recently stocked last week, and I went over there to check things out. There's a lot of fish in there, folks. You ought to be using the resource. Now, going on to, I'm still a little confused about rye patch, but since I don't use it all that much, I'm sure the folks that are really into it over there really they have their nose to the grindstone. They really watch what's going on at Rye Patch. I'm thankful that there's water in Rye Patch, that there's actually some fish in it now, that I'm just, by the grace of God, because I saw it when it was literally dead. And to hear it back, I'm thrilled. Coming back to part one, the clarification of Lahontan, I'm all for that too. I'm all for that. For the under limit. Let's see, what was it? It was under 15. Okay, so it was under 15 inches, and a 15 game fish limit. I'm all for that. I think that's fantastic. That works. I'm understanding that, and as part of the general public, I'm with it. Good for Lahontan. That was another water that I was afraid was going to go into the quagmire of adios. And then I saw some photographs of some of the bass that are now coming out of there right now, today. Holy smoke. I mean, it's beautiful. And also I understand that there may be some of white bass that are being taken from, no, please answer me if I'm wrong, taken from Lahontan and placed into our wonderful favorite fishery in Washoe Valley. Is that true?
Yeah, so, Washoe Lake dried up quite a few years ago and is another victim of the drought. And prior to that, we had kind of tried to establish a bit of a sport fishery in there. It's, when we were growing up here, right, I mean, it never went dry. I mean, it was full for like 35 years until like the 7-year, what was that? Before the 97 flood, it actually dried up then. It seems like it dries up more now than it did in the distant past, but I remember growing up here and we used to go to Washoe Lake all the time and catch bullheads and, all kinds of stuff in there. So it's always been important to me to try and establish some sort of sport fishery in there when water is available. So when I was the area biologist, we put white bass in there. We actually even put wipers in there one year, but they never took. But the white bass did, and they started reproducing, and people are actually going to Washoe Lake and, fishing for white bass and catching them. They'd get stringers of white bass, and we put catfish in there every year, so we got catfish going in there. And we are taking bunch of white bass, several hundred this year from Lahontan, and stocked them into Washoe Lake. And we also got some crappie from Willow Creek Reservoir, which is in Elko County. And we'd really like to get some crappie going in Washoe Lake. I think they would do well in there, but we tried to put them in there in the past and they never took. But I think maybe we just didn't put enough in. So we're trying to, we tried again to get some from Chimney, but crappie are really hard to haul. They're like, of all of the warm water fish, they are very finicky. And so we got a whole bunch from Chimney, and most of them didn't make the trip. So it was very sad. But they're really tough to haul. But we're going to keep trying and get that fishery up and going. I mean, it's full right now. So I think we got, 5 good years of water in there. Even if if we're in a drought situation again this winter, there's enough water in there that we're going to have, water for a few years. So we'll try and make an opportunistic fishery while we can and hope that it keeps going. And I think we can establish something good in there if we get enough good water years.
So do we not have any hatcheries that actually farm or reproduce crappie or white bass?
We don't have any warm water hatcheries in the state. No, we have an annual budget allocation that we purchase warm water fish. So every spring we'll purchase it's usually about $30,000, and so we buy channel catfish and wipers. And the last couple years we've been purchasing some catchable size walleye because a few years ago Rye Patch had a big fish kill, and so we lost a lot of those fish in there. So we've been trying to kind of repopulate Rye Patch with catchable walleye. And then coming out of this drought in 2017, 16, everything was dry, and 17, everything was brimming full.
Flooding.
And so everybody's like, wants their fishery stocked. So we asked for some habitat conservation fee money to purchase additional warm water fish in the fall. So we got a regular allocation in the spring, and then we also got an additional allocation in the fall to purchase more. It was mostly catfish and wipers and walleye. And then there's lots of warm water fish already established in a lot of our reservoirs around the state. And so where we have good populations, we can, collect fish from there to augment other populations. So we did a lot of fish moving this spring because, conditions are good, and we had a lot of reproduction occurred over the last couple of years. So most of our fish populations are very healthy right now. So we're just trying to make hay while the sun's shining.
It's exciting stuff.
Yeah,
I will tell you, I used to, as a kid, go to Washoe Lake, and we actually fished on the opposite, on the west side of the highway. In all of the fields out there, we'd throw catfish and pull out lunker channel cats that would go under in those channels underneath the highway and get caught. They couldn't come back, and so we'd catch these lunker channel cats over there. It was kind of neat. I was telling my kids about that, and they're like, "Oh, come on, you're pulling my leg." I showed them pictures.
Yeah, it's coming. It's coming.
Pretty cool. Good job.
Well, I have to concur about the catfish. I think it's an underrated sport fish, to say the very least, especially on a fly rod. You had best have a very hefty 8-weight when you go out to Lahontan, because I've caught them out there, and it will test every knot you have. So,
They taste a lot
thank
better
you
than
very
trout,
kindly.
too.
Thank you, Kim. It's been a while since we were at Washoe Lake throwing fish in on
I
being on the
know.
other side of a bucket of you. Well, now you remember.
You were with me, yes.
Yes, I was with you.
You was with me, stocking
Yes,
wipers.
we do know
in
Washoe Lake.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Anything else on Agenda 8F? Okay, moving on.
I'm prepared to make a motion.
Okay, let's hear the motion, because I don't have any other items pulled.
So, Mr. Chair, I move that, given the testimony that we've heard today, that we accept the consent agenda item in support of all the items from 8A to 8G. That's my motion?
Yes. Okay, we have a motion to accept the items. Do we have a second?
I second.
We have a second from Mike. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? None opposed. We have a unanimous vote. Now, we're up to item number 9, discussion and possible action regarding non-regulatory agenda items as part of the September 21 and 22nd, 2018 Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners meeting. Other than those items listed under the CAB consent agenda items in number 8, the remaining items on the attached September 21 and 22nd Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners agenda typically require no action of the Carson City Advisory Board to manage wildlife. Occasionally, one or more advisory board members may have a desire to discuss these items, and such discussion may result in action in the form of an advice or a recommendation by the advisory board to the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners. There will be no public comment unless the action will be taken on an item. Do we have any items of interest?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm interested in item number 8 on Friday, where U.S. Congressman Mark Amodei is going to give a natural resources update, especially when it comes to the federal lands bill. You know, there's been a lot of discussion with the commission in regards to that bill, a lot of controversy, whether the state should even attempt to start managing some of these federal lands that they're wanting to give away. And so I guess unless you or anybody else from the board has any insight on any of that, I would just ask that maybe, since you're going to be attending that meeting, right?
No,
Oh, who
I
is-
am not. Mr. Gilyanek is going to
Oh, Gil is going to be
attend the
attending.
meeting for us.
That's right. So
And
I would just ask that maybe, Gil, if you can give us an update at the next meeting, if you wouldn't mind coming to our meeting and give us an update on that. And
Mark, for the record, Gil Yannick, Mark Amodei talked at a recent Chamber of Commerce meeting, and the federal lands bill came up. So, he was talking about the possibility of, is it going to get approved or not? At that meeting, he doubted whether it was going to get approved. I haven't heard from him or talked to him since that meeting about a month ago. And so as a result, I'll be able to report to you basically just what he brings up and his opinion of whether or not it's going to succeed.
I know I'm interested in that since some of those lands are right here in our own backyard. So if you can plan on doing that, we would appreciate it. And then the license simplification update from Chairman Johnson, just be nice to see how that's going. I know we've had some members of our public that were concerned about that. And so, Mr. Yannick, if you don't mind, just kind of make a note on that and maybe reporting that back when you come next time. Great. That's all I have.
Yeah, I've talked with several people about the licensing update, and I've only had complaints that were almost like superficial about it. You know, one being my son. He had my his credit card. He had to delete and then re-put in the same card under the new system, because the old one, and he thought that was just unnecessary. It should have accepted the old one, you know. That's just an example of how they were like superficial complaints. Excuse me. Other than that, I have heard nothing but positive responses from it. People like the idea of like their boat registration being able to be renewed without doing anything. It just happens and stuff like that. So have you had comments from people or?
I did. I had comments from multiple people actually, in regards to they were thinking that maybe, you know, the new system did not recognize when they put in for units, didn't recognize, you know, the succession of the areas that you put in. That they had friends that apparently drew like their fourth and fifth choice, and when they went in and looked at what the numbers they pulled, they were apparently after the, you know, a greater number than they had. So why would they get a tag? You know, why were they denied a tag? And I apparently have gone to Department of Wildlife and asked about it, but I haven't heard if they've gotten any. I don't know. You know, I mean, that's what they're telling me, but I got to be honest with everybody. I went through it with a fine-tooth comb, and I thought it was fantastic. So
Yeah.
I thought it was flawless. I think they did a great job. I will just give a kudos to state purchasing, state of Nevada Purchasing Division for the Department of Administration, Jeff Haig and his group. They kicked butt on that thing, man. They got that whole entire contract dialed in, and really helped the Department of Wildlife with that. And my hat's off to them. All of them did a great cooperative effort.
Just for general knowledge too, I was surprised to see the way that is billed. These people don't get paid if you don't buy licenses.
That's right.
It's by transaction.
By transaction.
So they are in the business of making it grow. They don't get an increase if it doesn't grow, and if nobody buys a license, they still don't get there's no base pay. So I thought that was kind of neat too. The only other thing I wanted to mention, Ryan also mentioned, my son, that he felt there ought to be 3 categories of private and non. He thought there should be a public and a semi-private and a private, so that those who wish to be in the semi-private, their friends could see where they were hunting, but they wouldn't have
You're talking about your information being published.
Yeah, and they wouldn't be getting all of that information from the guides that way. And he also suggested it at least make it so if you're under 21 or something, you don't have to get that information, because my grandson's getting emails every day from guides, you know, that sort of thing. And so I did pass that information on too.
Yeah, that was one thing I will say that Sorry, that was one thing I will say that I had multiple people tell me they were a little bit displeased on, is that they
Yeah.
couldn't see what their buddies drew and that sort of thing. And I think for all of us, we get kind of excited. I get on and take a look at that and say, oh, I wonder if so-and-so drew a tag, and it's kind of fun to call them and say, hey, congratulations. On what, You drew a bighorn sheep? No way. I'm just joking with you.
Yeah.
There were some issues that some people have called me about. The draw, how we used to all go to Fallon, and you could witness the
Yeah.
draw.
Yeah.
That didn't happen this year. And some people were upset about that because it goes back to some ancient stories that we've all heard about how the draw was conducted when so-and-so was in charge.
Yeah.
And some people were really upset, and there will be, I know, because I've gotten copies of letters that were sent to the Attorney General requesting that, wait a minute, how do we know this was done on the level? It wasn't a public drawing like it's supposed to be. So I haven't seen the statute.
The draw currently is, if you wanted to watch it, you would have to go watch a server in Texas.
Right.
So
That was the problem.
Yeah, and
But even the last group still
Yeah.
had their server off-site. They
Yeah.
at least had a computer screen there that showed, and you could actually.
but you can it starts posting at midnight now, and you can watch it. There was a demographic that they gave that was very unusual. They never had looked at these demographics before, but the number of people in the 16 to 26 age group were refreshing their computers every second after midnight. And they could see that. That's never happened before because they couldn't see it. But that 16 to 26 age group that do nothing without the computer were on there at midnight every second refreshing to see if they had their number. That was an interesting demographic that they gave.
Interesting.
Anything else? Okay, you can't imagine how much we appreciate you making this trip to Vegas for us. And it's nice, we understand this whole process a little bit better now, and it's don't get too far away.
I talked to Liz O'Brien, the Assistant Director
Yeah.
of Finance, and told her how this came about, essentially. And she says, no, that's no problem. And she says, you're the chairman of the Finance Committee for the Wildlife Commission anyway.
Yeah.
So if you want to go, you got to go, and it's in the budget, and if the Carson Cab needs more money, all they got to do is raise their hand and they get more money.
Yeah, so just so the new members understand, we have certain budget authority to send members to these different commission meetings. Really, anybody can go. All of us could go if we wanted to. And if we get close to being out of that authority to be able to spend, all we have to do is just notify Department of Wildlife. They'll put in a work program for us, and then we're allotted more authority. So don't think that just because we have one person going, that you can't go and participate. We have in the past heard from members of the public where they felt like that was a waste of resources, but you know what? That money comes from a fund that is allocated for this purpose. So I have always found that it's more advantageous for you to be there in person and being able to hear some of the stories and go to some of the conservation projects and stuff and different field trips that they have, which is a lot of fun. Allows you to meet some of the biologists and the game law enforcement officials, as well as the upper administration of Department of Wildlife. So don't feel like you can't, just because we have one member going doesn't mean that if you feel like you want to go, make your voice heard. I'm not speaking out of line, I hope.
No, not at all. And the way they are doing these meetings is every month they're in a different place, and they're trying to hit all 17 counties is a goal. There's no timeline about it or anything. So some of them are very rural. So you've got to be willing to make, I went to Dyer, which is like on the northeast corner of Death Valley. I went to Caliente last. Gil's going to Greater Las Vegas, which, which isn't exactly rural, but, so they bounce around quite a bit. And the next one will be in Reno. So it'd be nice to see us all there for part or all of it.
Yeah. If there's I don't know if they've ever come to Carson, have they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Have they? I don't recall that,
Several
but
meetings in the governor's room
Upstairs, the old assembly chamber.
The old building.
so next time they come to Carson, we're gonna I'm gonna put on a luncheon for the commissioners and anybody else that wants to come. We're gonna do a big paella fest or some Italian food or something like that. We'll show them how it's done.
No, because they really like that room, because the acoustics are great. They really do it's a great place
Yeah.
to hold a meeting.
Up in the assembly chambers of the
Yeah.
Capitol, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
We got kind of an inn at that place. I don't know, you know.
Only until the new governor's elected,
That's right.
so.
Yeah. Mr. Bailey?
I'm waiting for item 12.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on. Number 10, for possible discussion of possible action regarding advisory board member commitments to the September 21 through 22nd commission meeting in Las Vegas and the November 2nd and 3rd commission meeting in Reno. Gil is going to represent us in Las Vegas, and we're very happy for that. And I am going to the November one, and anybody else that would like to, sure can. By the way, the meetings for the in Reno are normally held at the right there next to the fairgrounds, and it's a nice facility. There's it's easy to get in and park and hear everything and see everything, so it's a good facility.
So, Mr. Chair, I apologize. I have to excuse myself for participating in the November meeting. I have been selected to be on the executive board for the National Association for Government Defined Contribution Administrators, NAGDA they call it, through the state, which is my real job. And so I will actually be in Charleston, South Carolina that weekend, so I will be out.
You lucky guy. In November.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. You have plenty of time to decide.
Think about it. And
Yeah. Okay, item number 11, informational item, future agenda items. Does anybody have anything that they would like to be placed on the agenda for the next meeting? Nothing at this time. We'll move on to public comment.
real quick. Can we
Okay.
go back to 11?
Yes,
I'm sorry.
we sure can.
We can go back to 11. Mr. Chair, so I'm a little concerned, and first of all, just for the record, I want to first say that before I say this, that our folks over at the county clerk's office, Kathy and her team and everybody that works over there does such a great job in helping us organize this meeting, get our agendas posted. I can't thank you guys enough. I know when I was chairman, and I relied on you folks a lot, and I hope you'll pass that on to Tamar and everybody else, Kathy especially, and I know it's not the easiest dealing with some of these boards, but one of the things that I was a little concerned about was that the clerk's office posted the agenda this last meeting for this meeting so early. I just feel it's so important for the committee to at least be able to have a day or two to look at the commission agenda when it's published. I mean, we literally posted the meeting agenda either the day it was released or the next day. So it didn't really give us as committee member or board members the opportunity to really look and see what was on the agenda and look at the supporting material, which is really imperative. Now with that, I want to make sure that all the board members understand that under the open meeting law, the agenda has to be posted 3 full working days prior to the date that we're meeting, and that includes holidays and stuff like that as well. So, so I see Kathy, I know, wants to get that agenda posted, but it would really be ideal for us to try and at least get a couple of days to review the commission agenda so that we could, you know, if there was something that we were concerned about, we could call and say, hey, we want this on the agenda, or we want more clarification on, or if there was an item on that we wanted on the agenda or something like that, we could state that.
Okay, I can bring this up to her, and I apologize for that too, because her and I actually discussed it lightly, and I saw nothing wrong with it because she was going to be gone and I was going to be gone. And that was she asked me about it, and I told her I saw nothing wrong with it because we were both going to be gone. That way I could look at it real quickly, and then that was it, because we were. And I apologize because I'm involved in that early post.
Yeah,
and so I didn't think anything
so
of it.
I guess I would just, and I totally understand circumstances like that come up. That's one of the important reasons why we have a vice chair, I think, and unfortunately, you didn't have somebody to go to. And so I totally understand that, but I think that in the future, if something like that happens, just to give the board an opportunity, you know, I know there's been a few times where someone will reach out to me and say, hey, I'd like to address something with you at your meeting, and if we don't have it agendized, we can't talk about it, right? So we got to wait till the next meeting, just to allow us that opportunity if possible. And my suggestion would be, if it's of the board's pleasure, that we consider maybe at the next agenda item, or at the next meeting, agendizing at least the board maybe nominating, or I'm sorry, proposing a vice chair to support you, and maybe putting that person in place, just at least until we have our election, our annual election in February. So
I agree. I agree 100%, and we will absolutely add that to the agenda for the next meeting. Our former vice chair was Gil, and fortunately he's still here and available for me. But I being the rookie in this spot too, didn't even think about that, and I do apologize. I
don't think there's any apology necessary at all, Mr. Chair. Certainly, I understand, if anybody, how that goes, and I just wanted to make sure I brought it up to your attention and the importance of that.
Okay, well, we won't let it happen again. How's that sound?
That's great.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 12. Mr. Bailey, this is a public comment time.
Thank you, Chairman Green. C.K. Bailey, Carson City, Kevin C.K. Bailey from Carson City. It's my Jewish name. It's my proper, well, it's opposed to Christian name, you know. I want to thank this board, each and every one of you, for walking the gauntlet, for raising your right hand and doing this. And that's what I really wish to say. You are our gateway to having wildlife here, and that we have a voice. And I just want to thank you, each and every one of you, for stepping up. Thank you.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Any other public comment? Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.